Welcome to Uncovered. It's Wednesday. I'm Anthony, he's Ron, and together we uncover the MAGA propaganda that is not covered by the mainstream and corporate media. Ron, maybe we should start with Jerome Powell's announcement, because that has sent the markets into a bit of a nosedive. And that only happened an hour or so ago. He basically got up and said that the tariffs are too crazy and that we weren't prepared for this. Let's have a quick look.
The level of tariff increases announced so far is significantly larger than anticipated, and the same is likely to be true of the economic effects, which will include higher inflation and slower growth.
Yeah, where's the good news? I mean, we've discussed tariffs at length previously. We're obviously going to have to stick with it over the coming weeks because, Trump is weaponizing tariffs now to try and get other countries to change their politics. But how serious is this when Jerome Powell's like, okay, I'm out?
It's serious because, especially with respect to China, with respect to Mexico, also with our food supply, but this affects everybody in America. I've been writing about this every day for months. Maybe there are people who aren't that interested in the subject, but they better get interested, because this is crossing over into so many different areas. Where industries are being affected, national defense is being affected, medicine, food, cars. I mean, it impacts so many different areas, inflation. And that's why, when Powell gave his remark, it's almost like the markets have their head in the sand. It seems like, they overreact to everything. Like a tariff gets announced by Trump, it goes in the toilet. Next day he announces he's revoking tariffs, it goes up. It shouldn't be like that. These people, I'm not a day trader, but it seems to me these investors should be able to understand, that none of this is going to work out well. You can't constantly be anticipating, Trump's going to do this, Trump's going to do that. Nobody knows what he's going to do from 1 hour to the next. His own advisors don't even know. He could tweet something at 11 o'clock at night that could affect the markets that no one in his administration even knew was coming. And we've seen him do this many times. So, I mean, what this was Powell, I think, telling the investors, like, this is bad. Like, stop going with this emotional roller coaster based on everything that these people in the Trump administration is saying. I've seen markets react to, like, Kevin Haslett giving an interview on Fox. I mean, it's insanity. And he's just basically saying, look, the in the near long term, over the next 6 months to a year, this is not going to be good. And it's only going to get worse because, there's really, especially with respect to China, there's no end in sight.
The other thing is that there doesn't seem to be any economists involved in Trump's decision-making. I mean, he's taking advice from Peter Navarro. He's taking advice from Elon Musk. He's taking advice from people who don't really have experience in this way. Howard Lutnick, obviously, I guess, is a former business guy.
Not an economist. Yeah.
Not an economist. And so... Right. And then in the meantime, some of the most leading and senior economists in the world are waging in, because, of course, this is their moment. And they're all saying, this is nuts. Like, this is not based on any mathematics or economic projections or outlooks. This is simply whims. It's emotional. And when we look at China, I mean, 145% on China, they were saying you're adding that to the 100% tariff that was there before, that takes it up to 245%. I mean, this is the stuff of insanity, and yet there's no adult in the room to say to Trump, this is really not going to end well.
Well, and I thought what the Chinese government's comments this week on it were pretty accurate. Now, I don't believe everything that they say, but I thought with respect to this, it was. Which is basically, at this point, it doesn't matter what he raises them to. He could raise them to 1 million. At the level that they're at now, the United States can't sell anything in China. There's nothing that we can sell at the current tariff levels that anyone in China is going to buy at these prices. So it doesn't really matter. He's given away all the leverage. He has nothing, can't do anything else to them. But there's a hell of a lot they can do to us.
Yes.
They are the second largest holder of U.S. government debt. If they start selling off U.S. government debt, that is going to create havoc in the U.S. economy. They've suspended all rare earths since April 3rd. So they produce 90% of the rare earths. They don't mine it, but they don't mine all of it, but they produce it. They process it. For many of these rare earths that we need for everything from electric cars to F-35 fighter jets, we can only get it from China. And, even if we started building processing plants, it's going to take years.
But that's the other thing, isn't it? It's a bit like the cutoff of USAID, which should have taken 5 years to slow down. And if they wanted to shut it down, to do it responsibly. With the tariffs and with the markets, they're basically saying we want stuff produced in the US, but they're not saying, okay, we're going to give the markets we're going to give these other countries 3 years to move their manufacturing base to the US, which is probably the time it would take to build factories, to train people, to hire people, and to get a production line going. They've literally just pulled the plug. And that is where most of the irresponsibility lies, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't think anyone thinks it's a bad idea for us to make more of our own medicine here, or process more rare earth materials, which we can get from other. Interestingly enough, two of the biggest places on Earth where you can get these rare earth materials that we need, and there's 7 major ones that China has banned that we really need. The 2 places that have a lot of those are, you're never going to believe it, Ukraine and Greenland.
Yeah.
Just so happens, right? So maybe there's something more to them, spending so much time on those 2 places. But I made a list from the Financial Times of what percentage of stuff that we buy in the United States of certain products comes from China. Think about the different ways that they can hurt us besides the rare earths, besides holding our government debt. Okay, they produce, heading into summer now, 80% of the air conditioners bought in the United States come from China.
That's a big one.
So slap a 124% tax on air conditioners.
Yeah.
Ceiling fans, 80%. Toys, 75% of the toys. Get ready for Christmas. 75% of the toys bought in the United States come from China. 75% of the bicycles come from China. 50% of the antibiotics that we buy in the United States comes from China. So Trump has just put a 100-something% tax, which everybody's about to start feeling now. I mean, keep in mind, a lot of these companies had built up big inventories of this stuff in their warehouses, which are running out very rapidly.
It's not enough for the time that it's going to take.
It hasn't been felt by the consumer yet as much. Yeah. But it's going to be very soon.
You mentioned pharmaceuticals. That's actually the most poignant one, because if Trump's cutting off the supply, there is going to come a point where the US is not in a position to manufacture these generics, and yet China isn't allowed, or it's too expensive to import them. And so there will be a shortfall where people may have to go without their drugs.
Yeah. And like you said, the plan is just, we're going to cut off all supply, and that is going to force businesses in the United States who are currently importing it and selling these products to start building factories to produce their own. Yeah. I mean, that's the plan. The plan is like quitting cold turkey. It's like there's no like gradual drawdown or weaning off or, preparing people
let alone
for anything.
The fact that American people do not want to do the jobs that the Chinese are doing in those factories on that scale. And Howard Lutnick, I mean, I've seen him in several interviews where he actually physically does this mime of someone putting a screw in the back of an iPhone. And I'm thinking, like, is that
that's not how it works, man.
Right. Is that the extent of his understanding of the manufacturing process?
Yeah.
Because we are relying on Trump's whim, Lutnick's kind of, jazz hands, Elon Musk's bias, of course, because, he has most of his business is in China. And, there was news today, I think, out of California that electric cars, Tesla had the majority sales of electric vehicles in California. And now it's dropped down significantly. People are not buying Teslas anymore. I mean, that is going to be a big problem.
I just read that the EU is talking about making a deal with China for no tariffs on their EVs. And the Chinese EVs are excellent. I don't think that the US allows them here.
I've seen a couple. There's one company called VinFast, I think. I've seen theirs. And
if they BYD, I think is their largest one. I think if they ever were able to sell those here, like with low tariffs, Tesla would be wiped out. Yeah. So, but the EU is talking about doing that. The EU is talking about tariff-free BYD EVs in Europe. If that happens, oh man, that's gonna hurt Musk even more, and it's gonna hurt the United States.
America.
It's gonna hurt the United States. Yeah. That's the point. Yeah. Is that these countries are all looking at each other now instead of at us to make deals with each other.
This is what Trump doesn't seem to understand, is that if you get into a trade war, i.e. a fight, you're going to end up with a few bruises on your own face, let alone on the other person's face.
He doesn't think that. He thinks that the U.S. market is invincible.
Yes.
And is the biggest and strongest and best. Look, we are 14% of China's exports. All their exports, we are only 14%. Right. So if we cut off whatever it is, half of that, it's not going to crush the Chinese economy. All right. They trade with every country in the world bigly. So it's not like we are going to like bring them to their knees here. Yeah. But that's what Trump thinks. Trump thinks that like they can't survive. The Chinese economy can't survive without the United States.
But it's not just Trump, it's his entire administration. They have this American exceptionalism. I hear it the most from Caroline Leavitt in the press briefing room, where she talks like America is this, this great, unmovable beast. Meanwhile, it has the worst healthcare, it has the worst education, it has the worst mortality, it has, all of these issues that other countries do not suffer. And, shootings and gun ownership and goodness knows what else. And yet there is this kind of mindless view that the rest of the world kind of stopped and America just kept on going, making things bigger and better and stronger. And it's completely the opposite of reality. It's as if these people have never traveled.
They haven't. Most of them haven't. Yeah. And so that's part of the problem. The thing I hear the most from Republican Trump supporters who are millionaires, billionaires with a lot of investments, and I follow a lot of them and listen to them and read their stuff. The thing I hear the most is thank God for Scott Bessent, because the Treasury Secretary, because what they believe is, which is probably accurate, is that he's the only person in the Trump administration that's kind of keeping the lid on the crazy, and walking back and talking Trump into walking back a lot of the harebrained, nutty ideas that he, Lutnick, Navarro, and others come up with. So most of the reversals of some of this stuff, like the iPhones, the iPhones was Tim Cook. Trump admitted that. Trump admitted that Tim Cook called him personally, and he did him a personal favor by lifting the tariff on the iPhone.
But that's how narrow the policy position is.
It shouldn't work like that.
It's a phone call. You're literally a phone call away from not losing $100 billion.
That's exactly what Trump wants. That's exactly what he wants.
He wants the grovel.
He wants the big CEOs, the most powerful, richest people in the world, to grovel and beg to him. And of course, he wants something in return. Now, what did Cook do in return? Well, we know he did some things already, contributing to, the inauguration and all that. But I'm sure that Trump is looking for a lot more than that from Cook.
Talk to me about the farmers, because Trump posted this kind of weird truth piece, didn't he? I'll read it out for those whose eyesight is not great. My eyesight is not great, so I'm going to have to struggle with this myself a little bit. But he basically posted, "Our farmers are great. This is because of their greatness. They always put on the front line with our adversaries, such as China, whether there is a trade negotiation or in this case a trade war." What is this about, Ron? I mean, how is it now that he's deflecting attention to the farmers? Is it because he's been told that farmers are basically going to lose out massively because of the decisions that Trump has made?
Yep. And so one of our most important industries as far as exports go, besides energy, is food, is farm production. You know, right. Everything that we produce on our mega farms, our farming industry is incredible. Mexico's very good too, but ours is excellent. By the way, along those lines, 85% of our tomatoes come from Mexico. 85% of the tomatoes sold in the United States come from Mexico, and Trump just put a 21% tariff on tomatoes. So from Mexico.
Well,
so he just put a 21% sales tax on 85% of the tomatoes in the United States.
He asks for it to be taken out of his.
That's an aside. But China buys a lot of our food. So does Europe. So does South American countries. It is one of our most successful exporting industries that we have. So naturally, when we hit these countries with tariffs, the first thing that they like to retaliate us is our food industry, as our farmers. They are also very aware that the farm states are by and large Republican states. So that is a good way to hurt Trump, is to go after farmers because it hurts them politically. And that's what they did in the first term. And Trump had to basically send farmers billions and billions of dollars to bail them out because they were going under. And now it's 10 times worse than the first term, the tariff situation. So literally he's putting farmers out of business, and now is going to have to give them taxpayer money, billions of dollars in government taxpayer money handing out to farmers because they can't sell their food.
What people maybe, especially Republican Trump voters, don't quite understand is that by crashing the US and the world economy just for shits and giggles, it's going to cost America so much more, not just the taxpayer, but the Treasury. I mean, it is going to cost the country so much for Doge finding a saving here or a saving there. All of these mistakes that Trump is making because he's operating on an emotional kind of whim-based level is costing tens of billions of dollars every day. And it's
you know, he's lying about the numbers too. He keeps saying that we're taking in $2 billion a day now in tariff fees.
There is no evidence of that.
I just saw a report today that came out. The total amount that's been collected so far during the Trump administration is like 500 million. Yeah. That's the total. And Trump is claiming it's 2 billion a day. I mean, so he's just going to lie his way through this.
I've got this clip from CNN about the farmer subsidies. Let's take a quick look.
If you're a farmer, although it does seem that the president has some interest in, and we saw this in the last administration, subsidizing farmers to try to offset the tariff problems.
Which will be massively expensive. I mean, the last time we spent more money subsidizing farmers because of the limited tariffs on China than we spent on building ships for the Navy. This time the price tag is going to be way more than that. And people will feel that burden and the embarrassment of it as well.
So nice hearing from people that actually know. Do you know what I mean? Like we've become acclimatized to listening to Caroline Levitt in the press briefing room just making stuff up, you know, applying American exceptionalism to every answer. Oh, yes, the president has thought of that. He's thought of this. He's thinking about this. None of the above is true.
Yeah, that who just spoke was former Congressman Tom Malinowski, who's not in Congress anymore. I'm not exactly sure why. I don't know what the story is there. I should look it up because we follow each other, and he's very, very insightful on the tariff stuff. So yeah, he just pointed it out. This is basically like MAGA welfare. It's Republican welfare. It's handing out money to farmers whose food is rotting in warehouses because they can't. And keep in mind, eliminating USAID already hurt farmers, because a big chunk of their exports that they sold to the US government, they sold to USAID to ship to Africa. Right. That's gone now.
All gone. Yeah.
So look, we're going to be able to sell our food domestically, but we produce gobs and gobs more food than we could ever consume.
Well, just by nature of the landmass and the climate, you know, we are ripe for this type of export.
Why are we tariffing Mexican tomatoes? Trump is mad that 85% of our tomatoes come from Mexico. Well, blame God, because God gave them too much sun and great soil for tomatoes. So tariff God.
But the idea that Trump would know the first thing about agriculture is again, he is going to starve people, literally. I mean, it was enough of a problem with the Ukraine war and grain and the like. That was just the tip of the iceberg, lettuce, compared to what we're seeing now.
Yeah. So you wonder, is there going to be any political cost for any of this stuff?
I doubt it.
And I think in other areas and other topics that we're going to talk about, like the immigration thing, I think that they're not seeing much of a political cost. But in this particular area, I mean, they're not seeing much of a political cost to the terrible things that they're doing. It's not really hurting them at the polls in that particular area. But in this particular area, it is hurting them badly.
Well, I'm of the opinion that anything that affects the 401k or people's own investments is going to be the thing that makes, is the shift that might move the needle a little bit. But, I was talking to someone yesterday about how if there was an election tomorrow, that Trump would actually prevail, that he could be even more successful in this short term, because the propaganda is such that he is giving the impression to those low information voters that he is changing the world for the better. And unfortunately, it is taking time for people to really see the truth. And there was a story today that my family have been discussing out of the UK. And this one, I mean, it's just like blew my mind that Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister in the UK, has been told that he must repeal hate speech laws to protect LGBTQ plus people or lose a trade deal with Donald Trump. This is J.D. Vance has said, a good chance of an agreement. Well, I don't see how this is going to happen. In the UK, we do have strict laws on hate speech. We understand the difference between free speech and hate speech. And so that's just how the country is, for the better, in my view. You cannot abuse people publicly or to their faces. It just isn't acceptable. And if J.D. Vance, obviously, and Elon Musk, free speech absolutist, which is actually hate speech absolutist, isn't it, wants to now change the politics of other countries and hold them to ransom with trade deals, this is a tough one for the UK because we screwed up our relationship with Europe over Brexit. So we're desperate for a deal with the Americans.
When Elon Musk bought Trump, and when Mark Zuckerberg went down there and kissed the ring and started giving money, this is what they wanted. The EU has levied massive fines over the years against Facebook, whatever it's called now, Meta. And Twitter X for lack of content moderation, lack of content regulation. And also, as the speech laws in Europe are different than the United States. Well, so they want to have, what they want is U.S. laws, which is basically everything's wide open. They want Europe to abide by U.S. values with respect to that. And, Europe has always steadfastly refused. And Musk right now is facing huge fines in the EU over various things. So yeah, I knew as soon as I saw this, this is the devious thing about these people, is that they have things that they want for their own personal businesses and their own agendas that have nothing to do with trade. That's the thing. This has nothing to, although they claim ideology. It does, because what they're saying is that this is basically a tariff. I heard Trump make this argument that their fines, EU's fines against U.S. tech companies, is essentially a tariff, and therefore we should respond in kind. And so who does this help? It helps Elon Musk, if they coerce the EU into, I mean, the UK into changing their laws on this, who does it help? It helps two people. It helps Zuckerberg and Musk. That it doesn't help Americans in any way. Why does Americans care what the speech laws are in the UK? We don't care. There's only two people who care: Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk.
And you know that this is the oligarch plan, though, isn't it? About deconstructing borders and having the kind of tech billionaires run the world where there are no laws, and you know, this kind of it's a real extreme theory, but you know, a lot of them subscribe to it, and they do want this absolute power.
What's next, Gun? You got to have a Second Amendment now in the UK.
Yeah.
You got to have our gun laws. You have to start accepting our values as part of a trade agreement. Yeah. So, you can't sell us soybeans unless you change your gun laws. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous that what this government is doing, how it's trying to coerce people. And really what these countries need to do is they just simply need to bite the bullet and stand up to these people, because as we have seen, when you stand up to them, they always back down.
Trump obviously wants jurisdiction. It's not even Trump so much, is it? I think it's more the oligarchy and which JD and Vance are JD Vance and Musk are intrinsically connected with. Trump is more of this distraction. He's like the TV guy, but they actually do have very serious views about the way that the world should be run. We saw it when Vance went to the Munich Security Conference and basically told them they need to be more accepting of far-right politics. We saw Musk try and get the AfD elected in Germany. I mean, none of this is by accident. They're basically all white supremacists, Christian nationalists. They have this view of the world that is not shared by the world, but they don't care. They're going to just push it home anyway.
Yeah, and they think they're going to use trade in the U.S. domestic market and U.S. consumers
as leverage,
as leverage to achieve their values for things that have nothing to do with trade. So,
and tragically, they might be successful. I mean, there was a ruling out of the UK High Court earlier today. They were asking, what is a woman?
Yeah,
and
I saw it.
they decided that a woman is someone who is biologically born female. And that is going to bring huge problems for equality with the LGBTQ plus community. And so I didn't think it would go that way. The UK is very progressive in that, leading the charge with a lot of that stuff. And so for me, that was like, wow, this is the erosion of equality rights. I've got this clip from CNN about the China trade war that we kind of put together. Let's have a quick look.
Many more levers does Xi Jinping have to pull that would cause pain for U.S. Producers and consumers?
Well, look, this is a pretty powerful lever, isn't it? The rare earth minerals really are critical to so much of what we do. There are some companies that have reasonable supplies to get them through a few months. There are some that have no stockpiles, and so they're pretty much going to have to grind to a halt awfully soon, maybe even tomorrow. Look, this is really a statement about how closely integrated our economies are. It's impossible for Americans to make sophisticated computers without rare earth minerals that the Chinese have. It's impossible for the Chinese to make highly sophisticated computers without the engineering skill and talent that Americans bring to the table. And what we're seeing is, you're already seeing a huge breakdown. If President Trump puts a 145% tariff on China, which he has, that's already largely unmoored us from their economy. And to the extent they're retaliating, these two economies are being asked to separate, and I fear much too quickly. You can't change an economy on a dime. And, it's notable that some of the, just last week, President Trump had put a 145% tariff on these rare earth minerals, and the Chinese countered by saying 145%, let's make it infinity percent. You can't have them. These tariffs are hurting both sides.
I suppose the other thing is that Trump doesn't realize that China will just build relationships with Australia and with Europe and will grow their economies that way and will effectively isolate the US going forward.
Yeah. You gave a good example because they did reach out to Australia, but Australia said no, that they want to hang in there with the United States and they're not looking to get into bed with China. That doesn't seem to be the attitude of Europe, though, who seems to be looking to make some new deals with China. But Russia is another one, is that we have to keep an eye on as far as them expanding trade with China. So this is just not the way to run a railroad here. I mean, as you heard at that, China just left and said, okay, you want a tariff? We're just not going to give you any. Let's see how that works out for you. So, I don't see the end game here as part of the problem. And I hear this a lot from these wealthy Republicans. What is the end game in this? We can't build all these factories and produce all this stuff overnight. And even if we did, who's going to work in them? So I don't understand what and Xi is not. A lot of these Western democracies, let's face it, are weak. They respond to domestic pressure, political pressure, and they cave in to the United States. And so because they desperately want access to our market, but China, they're prepared for this. They're ready for this. They don't have a huge national debt, and so I think that this is they're ready to play the long game on this, and they're not going to cave to Trump. Trump is they're begging Xi to even just give Trump a phone call.
No, they can't.
Because Trump refuses to make the first call.
That's right.
And he won't do it. He's told for over 2 months they've been trying to get Xi to call Trump, and Xi just said, I'm not calling him.
Which just goes to prove that America does not have the power that it used to. This is not the great superpower that it was just 3 months ago, when Biden could have got Xi Jinping on the phone if he needed him. But Trump can't because he's put all these barriers in the way. You mentioned the end game. I have a theory. Tell me if you think I'm barking up the wrong tree here. But to me, all roads lead to Russia. And I'm very much of the opinion that Trump, he really is wanting to align the U.S. with Russia, both politically but also economically. I think that, all these sanctions on Russia have meant that Russia has learnt to live within its means. So they have pushed their agriculture to its limits. They're obviously not able to import from certain places, some countries, Turkey, for example. But in the main, you can go into a Russian supermarket, and Americans are told that, there's nothing there. The Russian supermarket is full of locally made produce. When Coca-Cola was sanctioned and couldn't sell in Russia, what did they do? They sold the recipe to a Russian company to produce a Russian version of Coca-Cola. So they're all using little ways to kind of circumnavigate the sanctions. I think the economy there, whilst as internalized as it is, Trump ultimately just wants to curry favor with Vladimir Putin. And this is, in his mind, the best way to go about it.
Well, maybe that's a good way to segue into the next segment because, Steve Witkoff, who was our special envoy, who is supposed to be ending the war in Ukraine, although there appears to be no end in sight, just had a 5-hour meeting with Putin and his top advisors. And he comes back to the U.S. and he goes on Hannity. Of course, that's where you announce major policy decisions that affect the entire world. You go on Sean Hannity's show. So, which is the only interview he did, by the way. And he goes on there and he talks about that they had a breakthrough. And the breakthrough is that we're going to start doing business with Russia. And he thinks that's the key, is our economic ties between the United States and Russia. What does Russia have that we want is I guess a good question. These aren't economic opportunities that are going to benefit Americans, the average American person. These are opportunities that are going to benefit a handful of oligarchs who want to go in there and plunder the country and make money off of Russia. So, there's not a whole hell of a lot that they have that we don't already have. They have oil, obviously, and natural gas. We have plenty of that too. So, but that, Witkoff's solution is the way to get Putin to stop this war is for us to make all these deals to bail out their economy, which of course, people in Europe have to be going, Why is the U.S. trying to rescue Russia's economy right now when their economy is on its knees, especially with oil prices plummeting?
Let's take a look at his announcement on Hannity.
Okay, and will the deal include things that maybe are out of the box that people aren't thinking about now? I would imagine Vladimir Putin probably would want to be in business with the U.S. and with Europe. Is that a potential that could come out of this?
There's no doubt about it. I mean, this peace deal is about these so-called 5 territories, but there's so much more to it. There's security protocols. There's no NATO, Article 5. I mean, it's just, a lot of detail attached to it. It's a complicated situation, rooted in some real problematic things happening between the two countries, and I think we might be on the verge of something that would be very, very important for the world at large. On top of that, I believe there's a possibility to reshape the Russian-United States relationship through some very compelling commercial opportunities that I think give real stability to the region too. Partnerships create stability.
Well,
there it is, my friend. There it is.
The last part is the key, right?
That's the key.
Real compelling commercial opportunities.
Yeah.
This is a country that's bombing churches and schools and hospitals.
Right. It's a country that kills any political opposition.
Great opportunities to do business with them. No, not a word about the massacre that happened on Palm Sunday in Kyiv, where they killed 34 people and injured, including like 7 or 8 children, and injured hundreds of others. Not a word about that. But we were talking about the commercial opportunities that our oligarchs are going to have.
But this is clearly an instruction from Trump, isn't it? Trump has basically said, because Witkoff is an idiot. You can tell that just by the way he talks. He's not able to speak in complete sentences.
By the way, his family is from Russia.
Right.
Just add that as an aside.
Okay. So he obviously is a mark. He's somebody that Trump is using as a kind of diplomatic go-between to say the things that Trump can't say directly. And he's obviously said to him, there's business to be had there. And I don't understand why there's all these sanctions. What's so bad about Russia? I mean, all roads lead to Russia with this regime.
Not only that, take a look at the Oval Office in the White House right now. It looks like the Kremlin.
Yeah.
Trump has brought in a goldsmith.
Yeah.
Like on staff at the White House, who is goldifying everything, like putting gold trim everywhere you look in the White House. And what other government building looks like that on the inside? The Kremlin.
The Kremlin.
It's covered in gold foil everywhere you go. So it's like even our White House is starting to look like the Kremlin.
Let's see how Caroline Levitt responded to questions about exactly this.
Can you say, did Russia agree to anything with Special Envoy Steve Witkoff?
I don't want to get ahead of those negotiations as well. What I can tell you is that they were a productive conversation was had. As the presidential envoy Steve Witkoff said last night, he believes that Russia wants to end this war, and the president believes that as well. There is incentive for Russia to end this war, and perhaps that could be economic partnerships with the United States, but we need to see a ceasefire first, and the president and the presidential envoy Witkoff made that very clear to the Russians.
It's the art of the deal, Ron.
What indication is there that Putin wants to end this war? Where are they getting this from? Like this is fantasy. He could end the war tomorrow.
Yeah.
He could end the war at any time. He's escalating the war. He's continuing to bring in more foreign mercenaries, buying more drones from Iran, buying more ammunition from North Korea. I mean, he's escalating the war. There's no end to this in sight. So that's the thing I think that really bothers me a lot every time they say it, is when they say Putin wants peace. Trump says this all the time. Russia wants peace. They want to end the war. What are you talking about? Russia has not wanted peace since like 1348, when the Mongols invaded. That's the last time Russia didn't want war. What are they talking about?
I want to play the clip of Trump's response to the Palm Sunday massacre, as you said, this horrific attack in Ukraine. I mean, Trump is not just on the wrong side. He's on the wrong side of history with this. And I think this will come back to haunt him.
In our time, of course, our time can be pretty violent, as we know. But that's a war that should have never been allowed to start. And Biden could have stopped it. And Zelensky could have stopped it. And Putin should have never started it. Everybody's to blame.
So is he backtracking now and saying that Putin started it? Because previously in the last interview he gave over this, in a very similar environment, he said that Zelensky started it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like enough Republicans in Congress maybe beat up on him about that little position that he took. He still believes that, though.
Yeah.
But so where do we get him to? Oh, everybody's guilty, and he can't. Every single time he's asked about this, and I've seen hundreds of interviews of Trump talking about Ukraine. 100% of the time, his first response is Biden, Biden, Biden.
Yeah.
It never should have happened. It never would have happened if I was president. Okay, sure. It never would have happened if you were president. Right. You know why? Because Zelensky would be dead and Russia would have taken Ukraine in 3 days. That's what would have happened if Trump had been president. So, but it's easy for him. Of course, he can say that never would have happened. Nothing bad would have happened if he was president. Everything would have been wonderful and rosy. But he also claims, that he would have ended the war in 24 hours with one phone call to Putin. Well, what happened to that? So why, if you blatantly lied about being able to end the phone call, end the war with one phone call in 24 hours, why should we believe you that Putin wouldn't have started it in the first place? I mean, it's so infuriating to me that, he can't talk about the war or the peace deal or anything without reflexively talking about himself. I mean, he's asked about the massacre. He doesn't talk about it. He never posted on True Social about it, posted nothing about it.
Well, he talked about golf, didn't he? He talked about winning the golfing championship.
And when he's finally asked about it, he makes it about himself.
Yeah. Well, because he's a psychopath, Ron. I mean, again, we're trying to analyze a man who is so completely flawed. It's so hard, isn't it? Because we expect somebody in that role to be sane so that we can have political discourse about it. But we're talking about someone who is completely insane. And it blows all of our analysis out of the window.
One more thing I'll add to that.
Yeah.
It has happened on Palm Sunday, this past Sunday, right? So what did Trump post on True Social on Sunday after this happened? He posted about 20 clips of himself all throughout the day, attending the UFC fight in Miami the night before for the 100th time. I mean, he goes to every single UFC. He's been to like 50 of these things. And all he does is post videos of people at these fights cheering him on, shaking his hand. Who cares? We know everybody at the UFC fight in Miami loves Trump. How many times are you going to post videos of people cheering you at this damn fight in Miami? Like, who cares? But that's the only thing he posted after this was people cheering him at a fight. That's it.
We often say that certain things are posted at certain times or announcements are made at certain times as a diversion or a distraction. And it's absolutely true, isn't it? That they know what's going down.
Sure.
And so they do the opposite. I want to ask you, though, because you're entrenched in the kind of MAGA universe in a way that the rest of us are not so much, what's the response from his supporters to all of these disasters? The fact that he's not been able to stop the war, the fact that the markets are crashing and the eggs are still too pricey. I mean, is there any shift? Are we seeing anybody kind of looking around and going, oh, well, it's not really playing out as he promised it would?
It depends on what segment of MAGA you're talking about. Like the rank and file, like the people who go to Trump rallies are just like, trust in Trump. He knows what he's doing. He's got this covered. he's playing 4D chess with these people. He's got them on the run. You know, that's their mentality.
Yeah.
But then the mentality of like the Wall Street, old guard, establishment, Republican type people is basically like they're freaking out. You know, they're like, my God, I think he just might be insane now. We didn't realize it before, but we're starting to realize it now. And because a lot of them didn't pay a hell of a lot of attention to Trump for the last 4 years, because, you know, he's down in Mar-a-Lago doing his thing. And now for the first time, they're like listening to him. It was sort of like me with COVID. Like, I hadn't listened to Trump in like 2 years because I just completely, he'd come on the TV and I'd change the channel. You know, I didn't want to hear his voice, see his face, like many of the people in this audience, right? And the first time I listened to him was those COVID briefings in February 2020. And I was just horrified by what I was hearing. I'm like, this guy is nuttier and crazier and dumber than I even thought, listening to him so much. And so I think that that's what's happening right now with these establishment types, as he keeps doing and saying all this crazy shit, is they're like, wow, man, well, I didn't realize he had gotten this bad. You know, I think that they're reacting to him right now on the economy the same way I reacted to him as a Republican back in 2020 when I started listening to him talk about COVID.
It's interesting because I don't think he has deteriorated. I think he's always been like this. I just think that in his last administration, there were people holding him back from all of the craziness.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
There was I
think he's like 10% worse.
Right. Because he's older and because
the criminal prosecutions snapped something in his brain too.
Right. But we are still dealing with somebody who was born as ill as this, who has, you know, this deep personality disorder.
Totally agree.
Doesn't change over
the last
time.
Administration, there were a lot of people around him who kept telling him no, 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 and a lot of them were fired and resigned and all of that. And now he's surrounded with people who are doing the opposite, who are bringing him crazier ideas than even he can come up with.
Well, because the administration that he wanted was the one that happened after he lost the election.
Yeah, for like 2 months.
And leading up to those 3 weeks with January 6th, right? Where he got rid of everyone, brought in all these acting attorney generals, people to do his bidding. That was really the real Trump, and that's the Trump regime that we have now.
Yeah,
and it's super dangerous. Okay, we have to take a quick break, but we're going to come back and we're going to talk a whole lot more, because there's a whole lot more to cover. We'll do that next on Uncovered. 420 is around the corner, and there's no better time to elevate your wellness routine. Whether you want to relax, recharge, or refocus, VIA has the perfect lineup for you. If you haven't tried them yet, you're seriously missing out. Whether you need to unwind, refocus, or boost your mood, VIA is here to enhance your everyday and night. Trusted by over 500,000 happy customers, VIA is changing the game in natural wellness, blending powerful, high-quality hemp-derived ingredients to deliver real, effect-driven benefits. Whether you're looking to sleep better, have a better libido, improve focus, recover, or simply relax, VIA has a tailored solution just for you. Whether you're looking to support your daily wellness routine, enhance focus and clarity, or unwind with deep relaxation, VIA has you covered. From their award-winning effect-forward gummies to calming drops, every VIA product is thoughtfully crafted, made with organic, lab-tested hemp sourced from trusted, independent, American-owned farms. And the best part, VIA legally ships across the UK, discreet, direct to your door, no medical card required, and backed by a worry-free guarantee. Not sure where to start? Take VIA's Product Finder quiz to get personalized recommendations tailored to your needs. So, if you're 21 plus, treat yourself to VIA's annual Spring 420 sale, Black Friday level savings of up to 35% site-wide right now. Up to 50% off packs and bundles, and get a free gift and more savings with your first order using our exclusive code UNCOVERED at the link in our description. Plus, enjoy free shipping on orders over $100. That's code UNCOVERED. Find the link in the description, and after you purchase, they ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Enhance your everyday with VIA. Protect your family by securing their future with life insurance from Policy Genius. Policy Genius makes finding and buying life insurance simple and ensures your loved ones have a financial safety net they can use to cover debts and routine expenses, or even invest that money to earn interest over time. With Policy Genius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million worth of coverage. Some options are 100% online and let you avoid unnecessary medical exams. Compare quotes from America's top insurers side by side for free with no hidden fees. Their licensed support team helps you get what you need fast so you can get on with your life. They answer questions, handle paperwork, and advocate for you throughout the process. Life insurance is a form of financial planning, and Policy Genius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. Join thousands of happy Policy Genius customers who left 5-star reviews on Google and Trustpilot. Secure your families tomorrow so you have peace of mind today. Head to policygenius.com/uncovered or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/uncovered. Welcome back to the pack. Ron, talk to me about the leakers, because I think Trump only hires the best leakers. And we're starting to hear of these leaks. This is the stuff that came out of the Pentagon, I think. This is a story that it's actually much more serious than I think the media have kind of given it credit. What's the story here?
Yeah, this is a big deal because we found out some more details on this today, or I think it was last night, maybe, or this morning. So remember when we had this big meeting that Elon Musk was supposed to attend, where the story broke that Musk was about to get a top secret briefing at the Pentagon about war plans and Chinese war plans. And
that's right. He denied
everybody went nuts. It blew up all over the media and it was canceled.
Yeah.
Now, what Musk claimed and what Pete Hegseth claimed was, oh, no, he was never coming to the Pentagon for that. It was for something else. Now we know that that is all a lie. That, of course, we knew that, of course, but now it's verified. They lied. He was going to get, this is the rest of the story has been filled in now, because now what we know based on people from inside the White House is that he was getting that briefing. He set that up himself. Hegseth agreed to it for some bizarre, insane reason. Trump did not even know about it.
Right.
Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, did not know about it. Nobody knew about it. He was just going to show up. And one of Pete Hegseth's own right-hand men was the guy, two of them were the guys who leaked this because they were freaking out. They were like, what is our boss doing? Why are we doing this? This is crazy. And so they leaked it to the media, which thank God they did, because it got it stopped. But, then what happened? So the other reporting is when Trump found out, he was pissed. He said, what the fuck is Elon doing? That was his words. He used the F word. What the hell is he doing? Why is he doing that? He doesn't need to know that shit. And he as soon as he found out about it, of course, he was looking bad. Musk was again making him look bad. So he's like, no, don't do that. This is, once again, Musk runs around and does all this stuff. No one in the White House knows what he's doing, including the chief of staff. And that's apparently like a very serious.
They just trust him because he's rich. They're like, well, he's the richest guy in the world, so he must know what he's doing. Everyone assumes that everyone else knows what they're doing, but no one knows what they're doing.
Well, I think it's just like, Musk is not used to ever asking permission to do anything, or, ever seeking approval on anything. He just does it. And that's his mentality, that he doesn't need to check with anybody. And then you got a moron like Pete Hegseth at SecDef who's like, oh, yeah, sure, come on over. You can sit in on this briefing. Like, this is a guy whose largest business partner is the Chinese Communist Party. And he's going to sit into a top secret briefing about what we know about how we're going to deal. It was a briefing about like how we're going to deal if China tries to invade Taiwan. Of course, the CCP would love to have that information, but You know, so it's no reason for Musk to be in that briefing. He's supposed to be cutting government spending, not being in war briefings.
But he has a vested interest, doesn't he?
And so
that's
then
why he
what
put
do we
himself
know?
there.
So what do we know is that Hegseth wanted to find out who sold him out, who ratted him out.
Right.
So he does lie detector tests, polygraph tests on all these people. And I guess this guy probably failed the polygraph, and then he confessed, and it looks like he's now on administrative leave, which means he's going to be fired.
So
but what this does is it's bigger than this guy. What they're doing is they're making an example of him. And what they're saying to everyone in the government and every agency is that if you leak to the press, we will catch you, we will find you, we will lie detector test you, and we will get you out of the government.
But what about Hillary's emails?
Yeah.
I mean, that seems like a
nothing.
whole...
That's like quaint now. That's like
generation
ago. Bill Clinton, you know, and Monica Lewinsky seems like quaint now. It's like, can't we have a scandal like that?
I know. You know? Consensual sex between adults. I mean, maybe that would be fine.
That was like the end of the world in 1994 or whatever it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
But now it's
how the world has changed.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, isn't it? Just how we acclimatize to fascism and to authoritarianism and this insanity. And I think that this is where, you know, Bannon's theory of flooding the zone with shit comes from, because it's almost too much to manage.
Of course,
and we lose sight of reality when every day there's another dozen scandals that would bring down any other government.
That is the Signal scandal, right? You know, the big, like that lasted 2 days in the news, and then nobody's talked about it since.
But if there was no other news, that story would still be running.
That was a bigger scandal than Watergate, in my opinion. You know, and you know, the media spent 6 months on Watergate every day, but no, that Signal scandal was like a 48-hour deal, and then we're on to the next one. You know,
let's talk about these deportations, because you know there's been some shift here as well. You know, with having this El Salvadorian president in the Oval Office, which was a whole embarrassing scene to see basically two dictators cozying up to each other. And Trump got caught on a hot mic basically saying, we need to go after the homegrowns next. He was referring to US citizens to send them to this El Salvadorian mega prison. In fact, he actually suggested building more prisons. Let's take a look.
Demanded the people wanted to change everything, and they wanted. He demanded they love you. They love what you do. You know, I'm not feel supportive. I want him to do. You know, for homegrown criminals next. Yeah. I said homegrowns are next. The homegrowns built. You got to build about 5 more places. Yeah, that's big. All right. It's not big enough. No, yeah. Come on. So this is a much different office.
Yeah, all the white people laughing about this. I mean, what Trump is describing here is not just illegal, but it's abhorrent. And it's done in all seriousness.
Yeah, I mean, that was captured on the live feed of Salvadorian TV, government TV. That's how we got that. This is well, let me just start with this. This guy is here for one reason, Bukele. You know, he came here for one reason, and this follows up on meetings that Donald Trump Jr., Senator Mike Lee, and others had with him last year, which is, you know, he wants to turn his country into a penal colony, a concentration camp for foreigners. You know, he wants to do business with the United States. He wants to build these private prisons, which are far worse than any prison we have here. And he wants to have Americans, people convicted of crimes in the United States, sent there. And the way Trump looks at it, like, oh yeah, these prisons are tough. They're hell. You know, everybody's going to be afraid to be sent there. And this is going to be great. And it's going to save us a lot of money because it's cheaper, you know, to send in. I wonder what the private prison industry in the United States thinks about this, by the way. They have, which is like a heavy Republican industry.
Yeah,
these guys who own these private prisons, like, and run them. they got to be looking at Bukele going, this guy's cutting in on our action, you know?
Because we're paying $6 million currently for the current crop of 250.
But Trump wants him to build, he said, at least 5 more.
Yeah.
For Americans.
For Americans.
But here's what I'll say about that. First of all, who are the people who have filed the most lawsuits in the United States over the last 50 years? By far, more than any other group, more than any other corporation, business, whatever, prison inmates. Literally, there are 10,000 petitions on average to the Supreme Court every single year from inmates in prison who basically took, notebook, paper, and pen and pencil and written out their lawsuit and sent it in. So we have something called the Eighth Amendment in the U.S. Constitution, and it deals with cruel and unusual punishment. And there are thousands of court cases under the Eighth Amendment that were a result of the ACLU, groups like the Southern Poverty Law Center, but also public defenders, but also inmates themselves who have won a lot of these lawsuits. And the results of these lawsuits, including the Supreme Court, defines exactly how prisons have to be run in the United States, down to everything: how much food they have to get, how much light, how much exercise, how many square foot, how many people in each pod, how many square foot per cell. Like, there are court decisions on all of this stuff. So what Trump is talking about is completely unconstitutional, completely illegal, and goes against hundreds of years of Supreme Court case law. Now, of course, who knows with the Supreme Court? Maybe they'll say, hey, it's fine, and just reverse all those cases. But there is so many cases that say we cannot send U.S. citizens to foreign prisons. Like, it's cut and dry.
Meanwhile, this poor guy, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, is effectively missing. I mean, there's no guarantee that the guy's even alive. And the Supreme Court said that the U.S. should facilitate his return. That is pretty clear to me what that means. And yet Pam Bondi and Donald Trump have decided that facilitate means that, we'll provide a plane, but we're not actually the ones. In fact, it was Stephen Miller, wasn't it, who's like, why would we kidnap someone who's from El Salvador, who's now in El Salvador, and bring them back to the U.S.? Let's see what Pam Bondi had to say.
Illegal that was shipped out to El Salvador, had been living in Maryland. It's a hot topic. Wall Street Journal editorial board summarizes it the following way. It says, Mr. Trump would be smarter to play the long game. He has many much bigger issues than the fate of one man that will come before the Supreme Court. By taunting the judiciary in this manner, he's inviting a rebuke on cases that carry far greater stakes, end quote. What they're saying is keep your powder dry for now. Don't blow it on this guy. What do you think about that?
Well, we did the right thing. It was one additional step in paperwork that needed to be taken. Now he is declared as a foreign transnational gang member. So, Bill, even if President Bukele said, we'll send him back, all that would happen is one more step in paperwork and he would go right back to El Salvador because he is an MS-13 member. ICE testified to that. There was a witness testimony. There was an immigration judge who testified in 2019. There was an appellate judge. All of these individuals and judges ruled that he was a member of MS-13. They are one of the most violent gangs. He is an illegal alien, and I'm sick of the liberal media saying that he's a Maryland man. He's not a Maryland man. He's a guy from El Salvador who's part of one of the most violent gangs in our country.
None of that is true.
No, it's not true. None of that is true. I mean, one of the law enforcement officers who testified in his original case, I think, was later fired for lying under oath for misconduct. The person was an informant from years ago at an axe to grind who claimed he was a gang member. But look, the point is, if all we want is due process, that's all we're saying, is that let's have a court determine if somebody is a gang member, if somebody doesn't meet the criteria for asylum. That's why we have immigration courts, but they don't believe in immigration courts. They don't think they should exist at all. They don't think asylum laws should exist at all. They don't think we should have any. And rather than change the laws or change the system, they're simply ignoring it. So we have two developments on this issue today. One is the Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen flew down to El Salvador this morning and met because the El Salvadorian embassy here in the United States refused to take his phone calls, and went down there and requested a meeting with this man. Wanted to see him, wanted to see proof of life, make sure he's okay.
Right.
And they refused. The Salvadorian government said, well, if your government tells us if the Department of Justice in the United States tells us that we should let you see him, we'll let you see him. So again, the U.S. government, it's a circular firing squad where the U.S. government says, we can't do anything. He's in El Salvador in custody. And El Salvador just keeps saying, well, we can't do anything unless the United States says it's okay. So everybody's pointing the finger at each other. It's a game that they're playing. So that's one development. The other development was that Judge Boasberg, who heard this original case, found the Department of Justice in criminal contempt of court. I read the decision, and let me try to explain it to people what he said. What he said is, you're in contempt of court. I find that you willfully and intentionally ignored my order and violated it. And so you have two choices. You can either bring him back, like I said, facilitate bringing him back, make him come back, and this all goes away. So if you want to have your little dog and pony show hearing and prove he's a gang member, fine. That's all I'm saying. If you bring him back, I'll forget the whole thing. So he's willing to overlook all the bad shit that they've already done if they just bring him back. He said, or door number two is if you don't do that, I am going to I'm going to order you to turn over the names of the officials in the Department of Justice who made the decision to send him. Who are the officials who did that? Because they don't have immunity like Trump does. They can be held in contempt of court. Right. They can actually be jailed.
Yeah.
And he said, if they give me those names, they refuse to give me those names, I will request DOJ prosecute those individuals, which of course DOJ will refuse. And he said that if DOJ refuses to prosecute those officials, he will appoint a special prosecutor to prosecute them. So the Trump administration, look what the Wall Street Journal said makes perfect sense. Why are you burning all of your collateral on this one guy? It makes no sense.
This guy who's married to an American woman who has 3 American children. Is this not going to go all the way up the chain to Pam Bondi? Is she not going to be found in contempt? Is she not going to be somebody who could be held to account? Because surely such a high-profile case as this is on her desk.
It had to be Homan, it had to be Kristi Noem, and it had to be Bondi. It had to be those, or Stephen Miller may have been involved in some way.
Yeah.
But I can just tell you, and you heard part of it there at the end, is I pay very close attention to Republican politicians, follow every Republican in Congress, all their media people, and everybody in the Trump administration, and they don't care. They maybe are seeing internal polling, I don't know, but their attitude is that this is a losing issue for Democrats politically.
Right. Yeah.
And that the majority of the American people, this is what they believe, and maybe they're right, I don't know, but what they're saying is, we believe that the American people, the majority, are with us on this. We believe that they don't care if migrants get due process. They don't care if they're gang members. We don't care about any of that stuff. If we just grab these people and deport them, the majority of Americans agree with us on this, and they will let Democrats spend all their time on this guy, defending this guy, and we'll win this argument at the ballot box. But Democrats, of course, are basically making the argument is it's not really about this guy. It's about the rule of law.
Yeah.
But that doesn't always sell in elections.
It's about setting a precedent, and I think ultimately there's no humanity in any of this. It's about do you know I was thinking about I was thinking about Kamala Harris's campaign with Tim Walz and the whole joy thing. I was thinking if they'd have replaced the word joy with humanity, and run a campaign on being humane, I think it might have been more successful. That's just an aside, by the way. I thought about that last night. Because for me, with all of these cases, the same with Mahmoud Khalil and that poor woman who got abducted off the streets by the masked people, there is no humanity, there is no due process, and that is what's missing from Trump's way of running the country.
I think the way they look at it is the number one issue they ran on was migrant deportations by far. Yeah. They spent the most money on ads about that. Their whole campaign was about that.
Yeah.
So they've done the calculus that the people who elected us, this is what they want. They don't really care about the legal niceties and the finer points. And so that's what we're going to do. And we don't really care how much the media complains. We don't really care how much Democrats complain. This is what we're doing because we think a majority of Americans are behind us on this. And they might be right. I don't know.
I don't think they're right. And I think what you're describing is the country being lawless and savage. And
well,
I don't believe it is.
At least 49.8% of it. You know, so
yeah.
I mean, we'll find out. But my suspicion is, at least as far as like the midterm elections, you know, the tariff and the economic stuff is going to hurt these people. This stuff, probably not. Sadly.
So Trump is now kind of leveraging against universities over free speech. This is like a whole new thing, isn't it? Trying to silence Harvard and
opening up a new front.
A whole new front. And this is why he needs the prison. So, of course, he can deport all these American citizens and the like. He posted, perhaps Harvard should lose its tax-exempt status and be taxed as a political entity if it keeps pushing political, ideological, and terrorist-inspired supporting sickness. Remember, tax-exempt status is totally contingent on acting in the public interest. I mean, again, this is a blackmail of sorts, isn't it? And again, it's trying to shift the ideology of universities and places for free thinkers to be kind of far-right nationalist racists. And that's the America that he wants. But these universities are holding the line currently, aren't they?
Yeah, for now. Now, what I can tell you is, look, I knew this is coming. Mm-hmm. This is we've already had the war on the law firms, on the media, on, many different sectors of American society, government workers, etc. Now they've opened up the new line of attack on the university system. This is very well planned, very well thought out. It was all part of Project 2025. This has come straight from Stephen Miller. It comes straight from Chris Rufo, who is the guy who created the CRT hoax and all that. This stuff is a plan of theirs that they have formulated for years about how to break the liberal dominance of particularly Ivy League universities and to break their leadership and to transform them fundamentally from who they have been for the last 100 years. And to do it by a number of different ways: revoking their federal funding, taxing their endowments, affecting student loans and grants. There's a lot of ways that a lot of levers that they're using to try and coerce universities into fundamentally changing their policies, whether it's admission standards, whether they want more conservative professors, they want more conservative students. The excuse, the crazy thing is what they're using as far as the excuse for Harvard. They've chosen to go after Harvard first.
Yeah.
I have my different theories about why, but that's the university that they've chosen to pick on first. Obviously, it's the biggest name. Mm-hmm. So the excuse that they're using is anti-Semitism, which is absurd. That they're saying the reason why we're doing this is because they allowed all these anti-Israel, pro-Gaza protests, and they allowed Jewish students to be harassed and threatened, and that's why we're doing this. Which, of course, they couldn't care less about any of that. This is not why they're doing it. That's the pretext. That's the excuse that they're using You know, it's sort of like the excuse Hitler used to go into Poland. You know,
right?
It's the same thing. It has not. They don't care about anti-Semitism on the Harvard campus.
Yeah, there is this weird thing amongst the MAGA Republicans regarding Jews and regarding Israel, because I think they see Israel as a separate entity, and that's why Trump wants to cozy up to Benjamin Netanyahu, the idea that, you know, he's supporting him over the war in Gaza because he just hates the Arabs ultimately. In fact, arguably they both do. They don't really want to have any involvement there. So that's a position that he's taking. And then that plays back all the way to here to say that anybody who's standing up for Palestinians in American universities is a terrorist sympathizer. Palestinians are not terrorists. Hamas is the terrorist organization, but they're not separating that fact, are they?
No, but you know, a big part of it is just that Jesus was a Jew. You know, I mean, that's obvious. Honestly, that is a big reason why they are huge Israel supporters, amongst other things. I mean, it's also like a white country, you know, in the middle of the Middle East and all that. So sure, it's that's a big part of it. So, but that's just the excuse. That's just the pretext they're using. They don't care about, you know, Jewish students on the Harvard campus. What they want to do is they want to take over Ivy League universities, because it's the same thing how they took over the Kennedy Center. It's the same thing about how they want to take over Hollywood, how they want to take over media. They were not interested in this election. What Project 2025 and what Stephen Miller's agenda was about was not simply taking control of the federal government. It is to fundamentally transform American society and culture at every level. And this is part of that.
Let's talk for a moment about Gretchen Whitmer, because she hid her face in the Oval Office, didn't she? She went in. I mean, why was she even there? Just let's backtrack a little bit. Why did she show up for this photo op?
Yeah, I mean, this is a good thing to talk about, because it illustrates this is the game that Trump plays. And I get so frustrated with Democrats that they don't see these things coming. Like, they just don't understand how Trump, despite so many examples and right in front of their face.
Well. Yeah.
Like, you could go on and on, you know, the Joe and Mika thing, all that, you know, it's like so many examples of how these Democrats try and they get into Trump's orbit because there's something specific that they want from him or from the government. And he abuses them and chews them out. And they always come out of it at the end of the road worse off than they went in. And it's like, you got to learn that the best way to deal with Trump is to stay away from him, stay out of his orbit. Do not allow him to draw you in and use and abuse you. And so she was there to have meetings about Michigan and, you know, about how some of the tariffs are going to affect the auto industry and different Michigan specific issues that she wanted to negotiate with some of the policymakers in the White House.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you know, Trump knows she's out there in the White House area. He's in the Oval Office about ready to sign executive orders directing the Department of Justice to prosecute former members of his administration like Chris Krebs and others. And so he decides, hey, bring her in here. Bring her in. They grab her out in the hallway, bring her in. She doesn't know why she's being brought in. There's press there and everything else. Oh, hey, Governor Whitmer's here. Look, you're just in time to watch me sign these executive orders. And, you know, the media starts taking her picture, you know, and then he also starts manipulating her by praising her. And why is he doing this? Because he knows that she is a very serious presidential contender for 2028 for the Democratic Party. And he is trying to knock her down and diminish her right now, early on. And I don't know, for the life of me, I can't figure out why she didn't see this coming. So she's brought in and the press starts taking pictures, and she just, you know, puts a binder over her face and stuff. So,
yeah,
I mean, she tried to laugh this off, but to be honest with you, I mean,
it's
our two main candidates for 2028, one is hosting, you know, Steve Bannon and Charlie Kirk on his podcast, and the other one is in the Oval Office with a binder over her face. Like, what are they thinking? Is my question. And I was so pissed off at Newsom, I was looking at Whitmer, and now I'm like, okay, who else is available?
AOC. Let's take a look.
You asked me what was going through your mind at that moment, and it was, I don't want my picture taken. That's all it was. I kind of wish I hadn't put my folder up in front of my face, but
yeah, she just shouldn't have gone in there. I mean, you know, I guess
this isn't a major thing. I mean, to me, like the Newsom thing is worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, hopefully she learned a lesson.
We have to finish in just a moment, but I have saved one story for the end. Can you guess which one is missing from our running order?
Absolutely no idea.
Come on, it's a really good one. It involves your favorite vice president and a trophy.
The trophy. This guy can't do anything right, man.
Set this up for us before I show the clip.
You know, I think they're trying to figure out like what they can give JD Vance to do that he isn't going to fuck up.
Right. You know, like, open a Legoland or something.
What can we send him to Greenland? He screwed that all up. Yeah. You know, he talked about, you know, he screwed up the Zelensky thing, you know, started yelling at Zelensky and blew that all up. Then, you know, he created an international incident by claiming that the British and French military hasn't fought a war since World War II, when they fought alongside us in Iraq and Afghanistan and other places. And, you know, this guy like is literally a walking, talking international incident. Because look, let's rewind. I mean, what has this guy done? I mean, he worked for Peter Thiel. We know that, but this guy, when he was running for Senate on his own with nobody else like helping him, no Trumpy helping him, there was 5 people in that primary in 2022 in Ohio. He was consistently 4th in the polls. He polled in 4th place. He was getting his clock cleaned by like lousy candidates. Yeah. He was polling 13% consistently. And then, you know, crunch time comes about a month out. Donald Trump, he befriends Donald Trump Jr., who convinces the old man, hey, you know, throw me a bone and endorse my friend JD up there in Ohio.
And he has to change religion, of course, because he was an atheist.
He becomes a Catholic, right?
And he becomes a Catholic
his whole life.
And he publicly hated on Donald Trump, said that he was an idiot and all that stuff. Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of that stuff Trump didn't even know about. I mean, when that stuff came out, I think he was pretty upset because Junior is the one who talked him into the Vance endorsement and who talked him into picking JD Vance for vice president over the objections of most of Trump's senior advisors who did not want Vance. So Junior has been influential with Trump with respect to Vance. He is Vance's hype man, you know? And so Trump endorses him and he goes from 4th immediately to 1st. So the only reason why Vance isn't, you know, trying to write his second novel or another autobiography is because of Donald Trump Jr. and got the endorsement. This guy's in way over his head. He can't do anything right. He's screws up everywhere. He lives on Twitter. He's on, I even tweeted today, he's like Cat Turd, the famous MAGA influencer.
Right.
JD Vance is on Twitter all day long, like, because he doesn't have a job. And so, you know, so what do? Okay, we're going to give you another chance. After you screwed up the Greenland thing, we're going to bring you in and let you do something easy. We're going to let you present the national championship trophy to Ohio State, your home state. You know, you're an Ohio State fan. How can you screw that up, right? And he breaks the friggin' trophy.
It should be easy, right? I mean, it's a very simple thing, and anyone should know who's held a trophy. The top bit and the bottom bit are just attached often with a little bit of glue. Let's take a look at how this played out. It's like the Three Stooges.
My first reaction was because JD and I were both enlisted Marines, right? So
yeah,
however, his job was public affairs. He wrote press releases in a nice big air conditioned office. My experience was a little bit different than his. So my first reaction when I saw it is, you know, now I can see why they only let him write press releases and they didn't let him near any weapons or explosive devices, because he would have probably killed somebody.
Do you mind if I play it again? I kind of feel like we deserve it. Let's have another look.
By the way,
yeah,
if you want to play it even one more time, if you look over to the right, watch Trump. Trump just starts laughing at him like, look at this dipshit. Like, even I wouldn't have done that. You know?
But I want you to listen to the music. I don't know if the music was added afterwards or whether he drops it just at the right moment for the crescendo of the instruments. Here it is. Yeah,
I think somebody added that music.
I hope so. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, Trump's over there like, look at this dipshit. You know, yeah. I don't know. You know, supposedly he's negotiating trade deals now. So,
I mean, it's
sure,
interesting.
Put your best guy in charge of that. Right?
It's interesting what you say about him screwing everything up. There is a counter argument that actually everything that he did, both in Greenland and elsewhere, the Munich Security Conference and everything, was entirely intentional. And that he really is operating off of this Brolygarch, you know, plan for the world. And he, you know, we've discussed before about he has a slightly different agenda to Trump. And I feel that he is trying to insert his ideology into this administration.
No, I agree with that. But what I'm saying is like his methods, like the way he executes that plan is very
pull him off.
Is very ham-fisted and not very sophisticated, because look, who is this guy? This guy's nobody. He wrote a book. He wrote press releases in the Marines. He worked for Teal. Like, what has he really done? I mean, on his own, he would have never gotten elected. Never on his own. Trump is the only reason why he got elected.
But that's why his vision of the world and his view of how the world should be is so skewed, because he really hasn't lived. He hasn't traveled. He doesn't have life experience that would make you understand about what normal looks like outside of America. And I'm very much of the opinion that a lot of these people, including Peter Thiel, who you've mentioned a couple of times, they really are quite deranged. Like their version of reality is so different to reality.
Oh, absolutely. Especially, I mean, Vance is way deep in that cult. I mean, he's
Stephen Miller,
way deep.
I mean, just listening to Miller over the last few days, where he's been piping up, you know, during meetings and things and on TV. Again, I just think you are literally on another planet to most people, and you have got all of this responsibility as the, you know, chief of policy.
Yeah. And he will be, you know, in theory, if everything goes normally and we don't have some sort of autocratic takeover, he's their candidate for 2028 without a doubt, especially with Ron DeSantis. I give better odds of Ron DeSantis being in prison than being the Republican nominee for president. So it's likely going to be Vance. Although the interesting thing is, like, every time somebody brings that up to Trump, he's like, well, you know, we'll see.
Yeah, well, Trump thinks he's going to live forever, ever the narcissist. But you're right. Vance is a very dangerous character because, unlike Trump, he's not easily manipulated by sycophants. He actually does have an agenda, and his connections go much higher up the chain. And
sure. It's like somebody from Wall Street can make a call and get through to Trump, and he'll change his policy in a heartbeat.
Yeah,
right.
Vance
would never do that.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, listen, we have to finish, but you know, I was desperate to bring the show in under an hour and a half.
We did it.
And we did. So I'm grateful to you and to everybody. Don't forget, you can download the audio podcast to the show later tonight. It drops wherever you get yours. Please rewind, watch it again, share it, comment down below. Don't forget to check out our sponsors down there as well. And we'll come back next Wednesday and uncover another uncover.
I just remember something.
Yes.
We still got a minute. So let me plug something.
Yes.
So Sunday is 90 days of Trump being president.
Right.
So what I had planned to do, I'm writing a column. It's going to be in a special column on Sunday, which is I have cataloged all the campaign promises that Trump made during the campaign, all of them, because I watched all his speeches and interviews, and I'm going to go through the list on Sunday, which ones he's kept and which ones he broke, all of them. And there's a lot. So that's going to be a special column on Sunday.
That's on Midas Plus, the Substack that we have. Yeah. And check out the weekend show this Sunday as well, because we have a very special guest. So much to look forward to. And we're still under 90 minutes. Take care, Ron. All the best. Bye for now.